We were playing in the field when it happened, and we hear the sound of crackers. But then we saw those two guys running. We started running towards where the sound was coming from. Both same height, and they were wearing black apparels, and they were masked. I told Malki to, it's just to chase them.
ਭੁਪਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਵੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਚੱਲ ਗਏ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵੇਖਿਆ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਉੱਧਰ ਪਿੱਕੇ ਵਾਲੇ ਚੱਲ ਗਏ। ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਜੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਮਗਰ ਚੱਲ ਗਿਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ, ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਭਾਰੇ ਸਰੀਰ ਦੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਇੱਕ ਤੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਭਾਰਾ ਸਰੀਰ ਦਾ ਕੋ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਕੋ ਭੱਜਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਸਾਹ ਚੜਿਆ ਸੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ, ਤੇ ਮਾਸਕ ਪਾਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੇਖਣ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਸੀ, ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਕਾਫੀ ਭੱਜ ਕੇ ਦੂਰ ਗਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ, ਉੱਥੇ ਗੱਡੀ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਬਹਿ ਗਏ ਉੱਥੇ।
I tried to press his chest and try to shake and to see if he was breathing, but he was totally unconscious. He was not breathing.
Police in British Columbia say the man killed outside a Sikh temple Sunday night appears to have been targeted. They've identified the shooting victim as the temple's president, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
So that day in the morning, it being Father's Day, we had gotten him a gift, a pair of jeans, because he usually goes through them really quickly because he just loves wearing jeans in general. And we had gotten him his regular size. He joked that, you got me a size too big. And I joked that we'll see. And he said, don't worry, within like a week or two, you're gonna have to go exchange these jeans and get me a size smaller. And I said, if you do that, I'll buy you 5 more. That's how I went about in the morning. And then later at 8:20 p.m., he called again saying that I'll be leaving in 5-10 minutes. And then my mom informed him that, we'd made semia for him, that, he got more excited. He's like, I'm coming right now, that semia is one of his favorite desserts to eat. And obviously, just 7 minutes after that, the incident happened.
How did you learn it?
Around 8:40 p.m., a family friend called and he said, your dad's been shot. And my first sense was, I just gave him a call. First ring, didn't pick up. Gave him another ring, didn't pick up again. And then at that moment, I just grabbed my jacket, And my mom and brother, they said, we're coming too. And then from there we just rushed to the Gurdwara. I just started searching his name like on social media, on Google, to kind of maybe get an update on what happened. There were a few Indian media posts saying Hardeep Nijjar's been killed. So my mom was basically asking me, well, maybe if there's something on social media. I just told her that, once we get there, let's see what happened.
So you didn't tell her you saw the news that he had died?
No, I didn't tell her. Once we got there, it was probably 9 p.m. by then, and I just ran as fast as I could. And my main focus was just getting there. Like, I couldn't think of anything else. I was like, I just want to see him. And I could see his pickup. And right away, I just knew that he had passed. And I made a small prayer in my head. I asked God to give me courage to pass the news to the rest of my family.
News coming in this Monday morning. Khalistani terrorist has been shot dead in Canada. Qiyami terrorist Hardeep Nijjar has been killed.
The word Khalistani means someone who supports the creation of an independent Sikh country called Khalistan. India considers the Khalistan movement a security threat. Hardeep Singh Nijjar worked tirelessly from Surrey to accomplish that. For most Canadians, it may come as a shock to learn there's an active independence movement in Canada for another country on the other side of the world. For Canadian Sikhs and Hindus, it is in some ways the legacy of the partition of India by the British in 1947. Then the largest chunk of land became the Republic of India, The smaller part became the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Despite having ruled Punjab for over half a century before colonization, the Sikhs got left out by the British. Dan Stanton was a senior Canadian intelligence officer for 30 years. During that time, he investigated extremism, including within the Sikh community. He said it was an issue in Canada in the 1980s, but has long since died out. Stanton retired from CSIS 4 years ago.
Who is Hardeep Singh Nijjar?
He's a Canadian. He was an activist, and he did promote the idea of Khalistan. I have my doubts that he was a terrorist. The Indian government has a proven track record of, in many ways, wanting to denigrate the Sikh community in Canada.
What's the truth about Sikh extremism? There's new evidence that the Indian government has embarked on a campaign to give Sikhs a bad name.
There are even some conservative MPs who are beginning to wonder if Ottawa is being misled by New Delhi.
And so they'll often create this illusion that there's all these Sikh terrorists in Canada going around. So I'm skeptical about the assertions that he was a terrorist.
We asked the Indian High Commission in Ottawa to let us know what the evidence is that Nijjar was a terrorist, but they never responded to us. This is video that the mainstream Indian media use in their reporting about Nijjar, identifying him as the person shooting the firearms here, claiming he ran a terrorist training camp in BC. But the person in this video seems to bear no resemblance to Nijjar. So we investigated. People in Surrey who should know have confirmed the man in this video is not Hardeep Singh Nijjar. In fact, through friends and family, we were able to confirm his identity. But for his safety, we're not releasing his name.
Where's the line between free speech and fomenting dissent?
People have to actually do things to support terrorism. It could be, providing money, funds, things like that. And so it's like a checklist. And if the individual isn't going through that checklist, so to speak, they remain an activist.
One method the Indian government uses to conduct its propaganda campaign inside this country is this. It distributes a mountain of Indian newspapers, free and unsolicited, to a number of Sikh businesses. Then there are other government publications like this one, which states that Sikhs in Vancouver are receiving combat training at the YMCA. That's something that came as a complete surprise to the Y.
Another Canadian accused of terrorism by the Indian government is Gurpatwant Singh Pannu.
We are going to balkanize India!
This was a non-binding referendum organized by Pannu in Surrey, BC in September 2023. He's a dual Canadian and American citizen, known widely for two things: holding referendums around the world so local Sikh communities can vote on whether to carve out an independent country from a part of India, which they want to call Khalistan. He also posts videos online, making inflammatory statements seemingly designed to enrage the Indian government.
And with Guru's blessings, and challenging Indian Prime Minister, Hindu terrorist Modi.
And enrage India's government he has. As you will see, that would lead to a global murder plot investigated by policing agencies in 4 different countries. But first, something else would happen to grab international headlines. Just weeks after that referendum in Surrey, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau makes a stunning announcement in the House of Commons.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the Government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty.
There's one simple vision hack anyone can use to improve vision, so you can say goodbye to your optometrist for good. Did you
let's talk about the other big story of the day. After the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made baseless claims of India's involvement in Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder,
the government of India calls Justin Trudeau's claims of a murder-for-hire plot absurd. It took days of official silence, but finally, a statement from India's foreign minister.
We told the Canadians that this is not the government of India's policy.
But the Indian media have been relentless, taunting the Prime Minister to show evidence of a Canadian hit list, questioning whether any real proof exists. In Ottawa, opposition leader Pierre Poilievre joins in the chorus.
I think the Prime Minister needs to come clean with all the facts. We need to know all of the evidence possible so that Canadians can make judgments on that.
Do you think Canadians will ever see the hard evidence implicating potential agents of the Indian government?
No.
But finally, after 2 months from south of the border, evidence shows up.
American authorities were quietly working to thwart an alleged murder-for-hire plot on U.S. soil linked to the Indian government.
Court documents are unsealed in New York, detailing an Indian plot to kill an unnamed Sikh lawyer, a dual citizen of Canada and the U.S. The plot begins in India, when an Indian intelligence officer recruits a narcotics and weapons trafficker who's facing multiple criminal charges in India. His name, Nikhil Gupta. In recorded conversations, the intelligence officer suggests a deal. If Gupta arranges a murder in New York, the charges against him in India will be dropped. Nikhil Gupta allegedly agrees to broker the killing. So the intelligence officer introduces Nikhil Gupta to a middleman in New York who will arrange the hit. Unknown to the plotters in New Delhi, that man is a double agent who's also working for the U.S. and will reveal all of this to the Americans. Indian intelligence agrees to pay the hitman an advance of $15,000 in cash, payment to be made in a car in New York. From India, Nikhil Gupta contacts the hitman to tell him it's time to carry out the murder. But there's a catch, he says. There should be no killing during the upcoming U.S. visit of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now the plan is about to go into high gear. Nikhil Gupta video calls the hitman to tell him that there is a big target in Canada. 2 days later, Gupta confirms, we will be needing one good team in Canada also. 4 days after that, on Father's Day 2023, Hardeep Singh Nijjar is gunned down in Surrey, BC. A few hours later, the Indian intelligence officer sends Gupta a video clip showing Nijjar's bloodied body slumped in his Dodge Ram truck.
It strongly suggests that the folks who carried out the assassination took the pictures and sent proof home.
Now it's time for the hit on the New York lawyer. Nikhil Gupta relays the message to the hitman that the killing must be done quickly because there are 3 others in Canada they need to eliminate before the end of the month. But 10 days later, at the request of the U.S. government, Nikhil Gupta is arrested in the Czech Republic, charged with conspiring to murder the unnamed lawyer in New York. Gupta is currently awaiting extradition. The name of the intended victim in New York is not included in the unsealed indictment. But we now know it was Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, a man with a bounty on his head. Though he gives interviews over the phone and on video calls from time to time, he rarely meets with journalists in person. Pannu's notoriety comes from angry videos he posts on social media denouncing the Indian government.
Violence begets violence. Is Modi government ready to face the consequences?
And what we learned during our visit is that the way Panu speaks online and in public is quite different from how he speaks in private. Panu is also a close friend of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Where did you first meet?
I met Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey, and that was, I think it was 2008. And at that time, we were running a campaign that 1984 anti-Sikh violence wasn't rights. We wanted the world and the global community to recognize this as a genocide.
The 66-year-old Prime Minister was the victim of gunmen identified as Sikh extremists.
In 1984, Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was killed by 2 Sikh bodyguards, retribution for an attack on the Sikh holy site called the Golden Temple.
The main targets of the attacks were members of the Sikh community. Angry Hindu mobs attacked and pillaged stores and burned buses.
Soon, violence against Sikhs erupted across India, killing 3,000 according to the Indian government. Sikhs say it was really many more than that, and the killings were state-sponsored. Genocide, they called it.
I was able to get the information under the Right to Information Act from the Indian Parliament. And what I saw was that over 37,000 families were compensated for their immediate family members being dead, injured. And if we have 37,000 families, there is no way in the world only 3,000 people were killed.
Can you tell us where and when you were when you learned about his death?
You know, that is something. A day before this happened, that was Saturday, June 17th. That's when I spoke to him, and he told me that the Canadian intelligence agencies have approached him just a day before that, and they warned him that his life is in danger. He sounded like very, very concerned. And then next day, June 18th, one of the individuals who we have been working with, he called one of our main coordinators that Panu is not picking up the phone, just tell him that Hardeep Singh Nijjar has been shot and he's been killed right there.
You say that he told you ultimately that there had been threats.
Yes.
In retrospect, when you think about it now, is there anything you could have done to take precautions that might have prohibited that?
I think it's a good question, Bob, but I'm not the right person to talk on this one. You should be talking to the Canadian agency, that you are going to an individual, emphasizing over and over and giving them a piece of paper that, you know, this is a warning that your life is in danger. Could they have done something more? Or should they do something even now? Means what can we do? What can we do?
Gurpatwant Singh Panu says he has no doubt Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi ordered the killing in Canada of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And because of that, he says, the culpability of others should be obvious.
This would be a surprise to me if the Indian High Commissioner sitting in Canada doesn't know that who has been hired and this is going to be hit. It's impossible.
The media in India have often broadcast names of those labeled as terrorists by the Indian government, or who may have had a price put on their heads.
In the latest, National Investigation Agency has issued rewards and named at least 43 individuals. 20 lakh is the total reward being announced.
NIA declares a cash reward of 10 lakh rupees on Hardeep Nijjar.
When you have put up a bounty on Nijjar's head, when you have put up a bounty on my head, stating let's go to Canada, let's go to US and locate them and then give us the information, where else I'm going to point the fingers?
Hey, did you know you can learn 100 songs on piano in 1 hour? No way! All you need to learn is 4 chords, these.
Panu clearly takes a plot to murder him very seriously. On any given day, he's accompanied by several armed guards, all former law enforcement or military. Before Panu enters his house, which is in a gated community, his guards go in first and search it room to room.
Do you believe the government of India truly believes that when you make your appearances at temples across Canada or across North America or around the world, that you constitute a national security threat to India?
That is the disconnect between the Indian democracy and the Western democracy. We follow the international laws and we campaign that let the Sikh people, the indigenous people of Punjab, give them a chance to vote. That's the reason they killed Nijjar. That's the reason they wanted to kill me, to stop a peaceful democratic process of Khalistan referendum.
Panu says he doesn't like to speak about the plot to kill him, that it distracts from his cause.
Cheers.
But he is also skeptical about how far American and Canadian leaders are really willing to go against India.
Making deals. While a US court and Department of Justice is saying and indicting an individual who was acting on behalf of the Indian agencies to have a plot and to kill me. And luckily, with Guru's blessings, I'm sitting with you today talking just because Indian agents picked up the wrong shooter. And in Nijjar's case, unfortunately, they picked up the right shooter.
It's a cause Panu says he's willing to die for, but he also says he wants to live long enough to achieve his ultimate goal, an independent Sikh homeland, to be known as Khalistan. During the production of this documentary, we had unrestricted access to Gurpatwant Singh Panu at the gym, his home, and traveling from location to location. The only condition was that we not disclose our movements or his security details to anyone else. Panu has now held several non-binding referendums in Canada for Sikhs to vote on whether they want that independent Sikh country to be created. But on this day, he's heading to San Francisco to hold a referendum for American Sikhs for the first time. For now, two questions still linger. Will American Sikhs turn out to support him in the same large numbers that Canadian Sikhs did? And what will happen to him and the other targets of those murder-for-hire plots on Canadian and U.S. soil? It's the first time a referendum for Sikhs is being held in the U.S. The Indian government and many political analysts quoted by the media say that most Sikhs don't want an independent country for themselves. But the Sikh community is not as concentrated in San Francisco as it is in Surrey, British Columbia. Here we find Gurmeet Singh Tour. He sits on the executive committee of the Gurdwara, where Hardeep Singh Nijjar was the president. He says he too was given a warning by the RCMP in August that his life was in danger.
ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਡਮ ਆ ਇਹਨੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੱਜ ਸਿੱਧ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦਾ ਫੇਕ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫੇਕ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਜਾਂ ਫੇਕ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਮੁੱਠੀ ਭਰ ਲੋਕ ਆ ਕਿ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਪਰ ਅੱਜ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋ ਅੱਜ ਹਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਲੱਖਾਂ ਲੋਕ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਆਇਆ
How much space do you want? Shoulder to shoulder cover, because that's where I'm not paying any attention.
This is it, the moment Gurpatwant Singh Panu has been waiting for and planning for years. To finally see the level of support American Sikhs will give him in his quest for an independent state. And the crowd doesn't disappoint. Tens of thousands show up, so many that not everyone is able to vote before the polling station closes.
ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਖੜੇ ਆ ਐਦ ਲੈਨੇ ਆ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਆਜ਼ਾਦ ਕਰਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਸ਼ਰੀਰਿਕ ਮੌਤ ਤੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਡਰੀਦਾ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਜਿੰਦਾਬਾਦ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਜਿੰਦਾਬਾਦ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਜਿੰਦਾਬਾਦ
Surrey, BC is known as Little India. A third of its population are Canadians of Indian origin. And it was here in Surrey that Hardeep Singh Nijjar lived with his wife, 2 sons, and elderly parents. He ran a successful plumbing business, his truck still a familiar sight around Surrey. And according to the unsealed U.S. murder indictment, he was one of the top targets on the Indian government's Canadian hit list. So who were the 3 other unnamed targets, described as being of greater value to India than Nijjar in that unsealed indictment? There may be clues in the murder of another Sikh killed in Canada the year before, 2022.
Rupudhaman Singh Malik, a man acquitted in the 1985 Air India bombings, was shot dead yesterday in what police believe was a targeted killing.
Maninder Singh is spokesperson for the BC Gurdwaras Council. He knows the Malik family well.
I think there is definitely within the community more of an inclination towards that this also was the hand of the Indian government through their intelligence operatives.
We understand this is a high-profile international story. However, we urge not to speculate as to the motive, as our homicide investigators will be following the evidence.
2 weeks after Malik's death, police announced they had charged 2 men who've pleaded not guilty. Trial is set for October. Malik's family declined to be interviewed about the murder. Malik's eldest son, Jaspreet.
I have in the past been critical of certain members of the RCMP in the way they handled the Air India investigation. But that's not who's doing this investigation. The people doing this investigation, I have full faith, they're properly trained, they know what they're doing, they'll find whoever did this.
Air India Flight 182 from Vancouver to London was blown up over the Atlantic Ocean on June 23, 1985. Jaspreet Malik's father was one of 2 men tried and acquitted in that bombing. And consider this. The Fifth Estate obtained access to Malik's WhatsApp account from the night before he was killed. It shows 3 calls from an iPhone with an Indian telephone number, one belonging to a former consular officer at the Indian consulate in Vancouver. A copy of Malik's personal journal shows he had a meeting scheduled at 10 a.m. the next morning with someone with the same first name as that former consular officer. However, at 9:30, half an hour before the scheduled meeting, Malik was shot to death in the parking lot of his family business. The Indian High Commission in Ottawa declined to speak with us. But Malik's death isn't the only thing that's triggered fear India is targeting Canadian Sikhs. During our investigation, we met with 5 different men from Surrey who told us that they had been served with what's called a duty to warn notice by the RCMP. This is an excerpt of an audio recording provided to us from one of those meetings.
At the core of the threat against his life, and if he understands it, because he seems to be very calm for someone that's just learned that there's, people or someone not able to provide all the details, but that would want to harm him.
Duty to warn is police terminology for the urgency to inform an individual that they're likely targeted for death. Specifics of how the RCMP learns about this kind of threat have not been revealed. Balraj is Hardeep Singh Nijjar's eldest son.
In late July of 2022, the RCMP visited the house. There were about 4 or 5 officers. They came to give us a duty to warn, which is telling us that there was an imminent threat against my dad's life. that he should be very careful. We were asking questions like, oh, do you know who this threat came from? But the RCMP and Inside Division were very reluctant to answer those questions, saying we can't disclose that information.
I guess the question in the back of my mind is, have there been others, and will there be others?
It sounds like they intended for there to be others. If you read,
well, there may already have been. Who knows exactly? Because there are a number of Sikh killings of Sikhs in Canada which have gone unsolved.
That includes questions being raised about Malik's murder. The details of how he was killed are similar to how Hardeep Singh Nijjar died a year later. Both men were ambushed in their vehicles. In both cases, there were 2 alleged shooters. Which brings us to this question. Who were the other 3 unnamed Canadian targets mentioned in that U.S. indictment?
How many times have you received a duty to warn from the RCMP?
I've received 1 duty to warn in July 2022.
That warning came immediately after Rapudaman Singh Malik was shot to death.
In many of our minds, we were actually a world away from that violence, from those human rights abuses, that extrajudicial murder that was happening for, 15, 20 years in Punjab. So with Hardeep's assassination, it actually made us realize that we're not out of that zone of influence or India's reach. We're very much within it.
Maninder Singh is a staunch supporter of an independent Khalistan and one of Nijjar's best friends. Unlike other targets like Nijjar and Panun, Maninder was born and raised in Canada, which may make him more relatable for Canadian-born Sikhs than the others are. And it seems those from the community may tend to listen to him. So much so, in fact, that on the night Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed, Maninder was able to control a highly emotional crowd.
A pretty large crowd of a few thousand people gathered within 30 to 45 minutes. I spoke there for about 10 minutes, letting everyone know this is how we take this as a people, and for everyone to basically in that moment keep the peace.
Maninder Singh says there was no one else he was closer to than Nijjar.
It was a relationship that was built not only on friendship, but also on a movement where we felt like we were soldiers in this movement for our people, for getting them justice, for getting them sovereignty. And I think for 15 or 17 years, it almost feels like you were in a bunker with someone. And every moment of existence was tied together.
He knows their deep friendship, steadfast support for Khalistan, and the constant speaking out against India must be thorns in the side for a Hindu nationalist prime minister like Narendra Modi. Coming up, what can be seen in security footage from the night Hardeep Singh Nijjar was murdered? A chilling minute-by-minute look at a political assassination.
So my dad, he was kind of like a superhero to me, just growing up. It was other people kind of have role models being like athletes or singers. Or, for me, he was my role model. But this period of time is sort of hard for me to understand on how to approach life. I'm trying to cope with this passing and find my place maybe in the community. And on the other hand, there's this communal expectation that you need to step forward for your dad now, that, you know, his work, what he has done, his seat is now yours to take, that this is your path to walk now. But I'm sort of hesitant in a sense right now that I've seen him do it for so long that I just can't imagine myself being him. There'll be a lot of people trying to take advantage of us, trying to use us politically for their own advancement. And it's kind of difficult to understand if someone's acting as dad's friend, or if they want to just use it for their betterment.
Now 22, Balraj Nijjar has followed a very different path from that of his father. Admitted to the University of Toronto's medical school, among the toughest in the country, he wants to practice medicine in rural Canada, where there's a shortage of physicians.
I was supposed to start in September, but obviously following his passing and just reading the situation, I had to postpone the admission.
Balraj, his mother, and younger brother have told us that going forward, they've decided to stay out of the public eye.
I think if they haven't been able to find a true path to move the investigation forward over the course of the last couple of months, they're not going to find it now.
However, based on eyewitness accounts and security video, we were able to piece together what happened the night Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed. It is a unique step-by-step record of the alleged political assassination of a Canadian in Canada. It is Father's Day 2023, just before sundown. Hardeep Singh Nijjar walks out of the Surrey Sikh temple, called the Gurdwara. This is the last known footage of him alive. Walking behind is Gurmeet Singh Toor, who we met in Surrey, and who says he also was warned by the RCMP that his life is in danger. Soon, Nijjar's truck is seen pulling out of its parking spot, driving down the laneway that leads out of the lot. Then a white sedan appears on the other side of the lane. When Nijjar's truck speeds up, the sedan does too. The white car suddenly pulls ahead of the truck and comes to a stop in front, blocking Nijjar, who seems trapped in his pickup. Suddenly, two men in hoodies appear near the exit and run towards Nijjar. They point firearms at the driver's seat, and they begin to shoot. Then the white sedan exits the parking lot and disappears from view. The two men in hoodies follow, running in the same direction. Gurdwara member Malkeet Singh, who was nearby, told us he saw the two men in hoodies get into a silver Toyota Camry. This is security camera footage of that vehicle.
ਐਂ ਲੱਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਡੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਐਡੀ ਜਾਂ ਘੁੰਮ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿੰਨ ਜਾਣੇ ਹੋਰ ਬੈਠੇ ਸੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਡੀ ਦੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਾਫੀ ਮੋਟਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਗੱਡੀ 'ਚ ਇਹਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਲੱਗਾ ਰਾਈਟ ਸਾਈਡ ਦੂਜਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਗਨ ਫਾਇਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਮੈਗਜ਼ੀਨ ਕੱਢਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹ 'ਚ ਸਮੈਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੂਏਂ ਦੀ ਜਾਂ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਹ ਸਮੈਲ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਆਈ ਉੱਥੇ.
With at least 6 men and 2 vehicles, it seems clear that Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder was a large, well-organized operation. This is the actual security camera footage from that day. It is somewhat difficult to see because it's taken at a distance, so I've slowed it down. This is Nijjar's truck on the right of the screen, and this is the white sedan on the left. You can barely see them, but these are the two killers running towards Nijjar's truck. It's at this moment that the shooting begins. And the white sedan pulls away. The two men are running in the same direction. At this point, Hardeep Singh Nijjar is either dead or dying.
How to open your car door while submerged underwater. A fatal construction flaw in all recent automobiles makes it virtually
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of the committee.
The public hearing into foreign political interference in Canada is now underway, examining which countries may be trying to interfere with and influence the outcome of elections in Canada. Initially, it had only looked at China and Russia. It now will also look at Indian interference. Dan Stanton, former chief of counterterrorism for the Canadian Security Service CSIS, is among the experts called to testify.
Looking back on your years with CSIS, can you estimate how much of your time then would have been consumed by issues that we would now consider to be foreign interference?
At least 50% of it is what today would be seen as foreign interference.
Right. How was it seen then?
Well, back then, it was more state-on-state espionage, and foreign interference was more targeting diaspora communities. There wasn't what we've understand is the case where some of these states have actually targeted our electoral processes and targeted members of parliament and things like that. So the threat has kind of evolved and become more sophisticated. And then later at certain times in my career, the issue of Indian foreign interference would pop up because it had been kind of a consistent threat, but not to the point that it appears to be now.
That might seem an understatement. Journalist Sam Cooper reported that Indian agents appeared to have interfered in the federal Conservative Party's leadership race in 2022. A CSIS intelligence assessment stated that Indian agents purchased party memberships for one candidate in order to undermine the candidacy of another, specifically Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown.
Disagree with Mr. Poilievre's approach that you can...
Mr. Brown, you're up.
How did you respond on a gut level when you saw that?
In some ways, I wasn't surprised because my experience with foreign interference is that over time, they become more sophisticated and they become a little bolder.
But Sikh separatist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu refuses to give up. Later this month, on March 31st, he will hold a second referendum in the U.S., in Sacramento, California. He says one way or the other, it will be the next step in the creation of an independent country for the Sikhs, carved out of India, which they will call the Republic of Khalistan.
India will never agree to giving up Punjab. To what end do you hold these referendums?
India should basically learn from the history of the British rulers, whoever used to say that their ruler's sun never sets. But one day it did. You mark my word, between 11 years to 21 years we'll be free.